Alright guys, so this video is all about startup. So get out of your head what you have in your mind about how much money you need to start a childcare program, what funds am I going to use, what resources do I have available, because in this video today specifically, I'm going to be talking about the 5 tips that you need to consider on what your childcare startup budget is and how much money you need to get that ball rolling. Let's dive in. Alright guys, so the first thing you're thinking about when you're starting your childcare program and you're starting your actual startup program, the number one question you're going to have is how much money do I need? How much capital do I need to get this ball rolling? And one of the things that the first determining factors, guys, step number one is going to be determine your size, okay? Whether you want to be a small, medium, or large based childcare program from the jump, that is going to let you know in essence what your startup space is and what your startup capital you may need. I always tell my mentees in our Educated Minds Childcare University Startup course is that there is no immediate number that you can have. I can give you a guesstimate or an estimate of what you may have, but we've started our childcare based program, one of them at $50,000, and we exhausted all the money. Why? Because that program was not licensed already or zoned already as a previous childcare program. So I spent a lot of money in renovations and contractors and lawyers and attorneys and zoning, right? Whereas though one of our other location sites, we may have only spent $15,000 in a startup space because it was already zoned as a childcare center. So there is never an immediate number that you need, but the first determining factor is going to be your size. When you think of starting your own childcare program, whether you are going family, which is in your house, group, which is an in-between and still can be considered in your home, or commercial, or an actual commercial space that you choose to either lease and or own. So the number one thing is going to be determine your size, and your size will then go according to your budget, okay? So that's step number one. Alright, so step number 2, guys, is going to be estimating your costs. And when I say estimating your costs, this is one of the number one mistakes that us as startup entrepreneurs that we make, especially in the childcare space, that we don't account for the extra rent, the payroll, all of the extra expenses, the consistent marketing, all of the things that you really need to get the operations in flow. So I always say estimate your costs, and you should definitely have a startup budget, but you also need a operational cost budget. So that's another thing that we always talk about in the startup course, is going to be having a startup budget and having an operations budget. When you think of your startup budget should include things such as your signage, such as your drywall, your floors, your paint, your carpet, the learning materials, the toys, all of these things to be ready for your inspection on day one and to pass that inspection on day one, because that is ultimately the goal, okay? But now your doors are open. And what we forget is, even though whether one child walks in the door or whether 3 children walk in the door, we still have to have cushion money so that we can sustain our business as we are growing our business. So I always say, when you're thinking of starting your estimated costs, whatever your startup budget is, that should be able to cover your actual startup expenses, right? But another thing that we talk about is do not use all of your startup money, literally all of your actual capital, to start this business. Let's say ideally that, I don't know, maybe you have $50,000, right? And you found the childcare program that was already a daycare center, and for you to get the ball going and running, I'm not using all 50. I'm not going to use all $50,000, right? I may use only $20,000 for the startup space. Why? Because I'm going to be accruing, and I'm going to making sure that I am obtaining credit cards for Home Depot, credit cards for Lowe's. Why? Because I don't want to spend all of my money in a renovation project. I want to make sure that I have a separate pot readily available for the operations costs, right? Because operations costs, our number one expense when it comes to childcare is going to be payroll. And if you have a lease or a high lease, many times they may give you 3, 4, 5 months for free, but now your doors are open 9 months later and you still may not have children. So you want to make sure that you estimate the cost for not just startup, but you also want to make sure that you estimate the cost for your operation costs. And that also identifies to go with what type of market, what type of client, right? Where's your business located? Where are you going to be servicing these people in your actual childcare program? So that is going to be step number 2, to make sure that you estimate your cost. Step number 3 is going to be understand what type of costs that you will have, okay? And when I say that, you want to consider costs that are going to be one-time costs and things that are going to be ongoing costs. So ongoing costs is going to be your non-negotiables. That's going to be your utilities. That may be your subscriptions that you have. That's definitely going to be your rent, because we can't operate a building without that. That's also going to be any of your signage or any of your marketing, and definitely your payroll. So you want to make sure that you identify what type of costs that you're going to have, and that really determines whether you're going to have fixed cost or whether you're going to have what they love to call a variable cost. So variable costs are things that fluctuate up and down. So that's your utilities of things that go up one month, things that go down one month. If it's cold and you're in a more winter-based or cold-based area, you know that your gas bill on times could be $1,000, could be $600, could be $200 based on, back to my number 1, is going to be the size of your building and the size of your program that you're thinking about. So some of your most common startup expenses and some of your most common ongoing expenses is going to be your website, right? So things that host your program. It's also going to be your rental space, so the actual rent or mortgage that you're using to cover for your actual childcare-based program. It's also going to be your office furniture. So it could be one-time costs as your computers, your shelving, your toys for the children. Those are one-time cost expenses that you have to allot for. Now, in that classroom, are you going to have all the state-of-the-art toys? No. Why? Because your goal as a new startup entrepreneur is to get your doors open, start to make some of the return on your investment back, and then reinvest back that money into your business so you can continue to grow and scale, okay? You're also going to have your basic supplies, which is a major one that we don't think about. Your bleach, right? All of your cleaning supplies, so your bleach, your trash bags, your gloves. If you have a food-based program, especially my new startup people, you may not be eligible for a food program yet. So food is going to be coming out of your pocket. And so you want to ask yourself in your startup space as you're creating this business model, am I going to be paying for lunch? Am I going to be covering breakfast, lunch, and snack for my families, or is that going to be factored into their tuition, or am I only going to cover some of the breakfast, the lunch, and or the snack, okay? Also, all of your insurances and your licenses, your advertisements, and more importantly, any of your business plan costs. So these are some of the things you consider when it comes to what some of your startup expenses are, understanding what type of costs that you will have to continuously operate and grow this childcare program. All right, guys, step number 4 is going to be project your cash flow. And when you think of your cash flow, it's the most simple answer. It is, how do you make money in your childcare program, okay? So this is something that's so pivotal, and this is something that's really, really important for my startup. So based upon where you are in your demographic area, and we talk about that in a whole nother video when we're talking about choosing locations, so make sure that you tap in to this video. I will tag it somewhere and on this video here on the screen. But you really want to project your cash flow, and that is how you make money in your childcare program. So are you going to be having state-funded childcare program services where the state is going to be paying you? Are you going to be primarily private-based owned childcare program where parents are coming out of their actual pockets on a daily basis paying you? Are you going to be striving for what some of the free pre-K service grant programs are, which is what our childcare program operates out of, about 85% now? So you want to ask yourself, how is cash going to flow in my business? Another way that cash flows in many childcare centers is, aside from the tuition, you may have extra added on costs. So you may charge for transportation in your childcare program. You may have extra additional programs such as arts or science or math or dance that you're bringing in on Saturdays to your childcare program. So you want to project your cash flow. And one of the best ways to project your cash flow is determine your ideal client that you are going to be servicing. Because remember, if you're looking at this video, you done for the most part did your research when it comes to where you want to be located, what type of client you want to serve. Now you want to project the cash flow, because the cash flow is what keeps the business what? Running and going and flowing, okay? And one of the best ways to do that is project your cash flow in for at least 3 to 6 months. And I say 3 to 6 months because your first 3 months of childcare, of opening any business in any industry, because I'm a serial entrepreneur, it may not do just that. right? We may have a plan A, but that doesn't mean that the day that you become licensed, especially if you are new, you don't already have a name for yourself, like this is your first childcare center that you're opening, there may not be children piling and flowing into your doors. So you want to make sure that you are projecting what that cash flow will look like 3 months after, because that always gives you a safety net. And then last but not least, you want to make sure that you're projecting the cash flow for the daily operations to cover. Because one of the biggest things I always share in any business, but specifically in the childcare industry, you may merely be breaking even, especially your first year to two of business, and that's okay. Because now you're learning what works. You're learning your up seasons, you're learning your down seasons, you know, all of those things that it takes in order to really be a successful entrepreneur. So make sure that you do a really great job at projecting what your cash flow is, based off of your demographics that you're going to be servicing in your community for your childcare program. All right, step number 5, guys, which is the most important step. Once you've done all this planning and this research, figure out what are going to be your financing methods, okay? So one of the most important things, now that you've determined your costs, you've projected what your cash flow is going to be, you really need to consider how are you going to pursue financing and funding. Because just like any business, we can all have a dream, but the money is where is it at? And so I always tell providers one of the most important things, especially in our coaching program, is you want to focus on that personal credit so you can try to get business credit, okay? You do not want to use all of your cash that's sitting liquid in your bank account to be covering all of these different operational costs as months and months are going on. So if you do not have a childcare based program yet and you are researching, that's why you're on YouTube, that's why you locked in on this video, you really want to make sure that you are educating your mind, of course, okay? You want to make sure that you're educating your mind in the space of what does healthy financing look like? How can I get loans? How can I get credit cards even if I don't need them right now? Why? Because you will come to a space in your business that you will need that fluff, which is that extra cash cushion, and you don't want to get into a space like we have been in before where we are robbing Peter to pay Paul, because that's never fun for anyone, okay? So hopefully you like this video with these 5 tips on how much money you need to start your childcare program. If you like this video, leave me some comments down below, and if you want more of these videos or where they came from, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe.